Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Clone Wars. And don't worry, all will make sense very soon. You have probably seen the streams and the viral clips, you've maybe even played the game yourself. Meccha Chameleon is the latest low-budget indie darling to go viral. And honestly, it's gone so viral that it kind of breaks one's brain to think about. It's almost certainly been this year's best-selling game so far, by which I mean 15 million sales in a month. That's wild. But it's not the full story, because millions and millions more are playing Meccha Chameleon's gameplay than have ever paid for the game. Not just many millions, in fact, tens of millions of people. And that's because even as pundits crown games like this as the future of gaming, free of AAA demands, Meccha Chameleon has got a bit of a copycat problem. To understand the copycat problem, we got to actually understand the game being copied here. Meccha Chameleon is prop hunt with a paintbrush. Essentially bone white stick figures spread out onto the stage, seekers have to find them, and the hiders get a whole Microsoft Paint's worth of drawing tools to recolor their bodies and blend into the environment. It's pretty awesome. The game costs only $6, and it is a wildly impressive effort for just two Japanese indie devs who cobbled it together from existing assets and systems. And when you look into their history, you can really see that they're adapting to this modern way of making games, where they actually have half a dozen other titles, but they just never really broke through. Of course, this one really did work, and I think we can understand why it worked. It had a lot of viral vectors, those things that just make a game spread. I mean, people really like the creative twist on a prop hunt formula. Of course, that it's people making janky art, well, that means that it's perfect for streaming, and that all means it's now the best-selling game in Steam. Of course, as always, with these party games, the virality and the money do turn into armchair game publishing conversations. And that is our next port of call. So as soon as a game like this succeeds, everyone wants to know how and why so they can do it themselves. Now, speaking to GameWith, the devs explained their fairly bare-bones style. They said that they start with a minimum viable prototype, and then they build on whatever works. And to build this one, they cannibalized their previous multiplayer games, like Link Penguins, to basically get the multiplayer backend up and running. Hosting then ran through Epic Online Services, so that's free, and then they spent a grand total of nothing in marketing. And as a story, this is about as close as indie games get to the platonic ideal. You know, years of modest results, and then the audience latches onto one of your ideas and leaves you basically set for life. We've seen this with, say, games like Among Us, with Peak, with Lethal Company, and as is tradition in gaming, this becomes a competition. Meccha Chameleon is succeeding where massive big-budget games are failing. This is what gamers want. This is the future gamers deserve. Games full of heart and soul, and, you know, all the other tropes that turn up whenever we have this type of conversation about a cool new game that goes viral. And of course, there's a kernel of truth in all that, and while many of these games end up being flashes in the pan, they obviously speak to audiences and spark a lot of joy. Except, that's not quite the end of this story. You see, the moment you start talking about what audiences want, well, you'd better start looking at the whole audience, because the whole audience is not Steam. And as you're about to find out, what Meccha Chameleon is to the biggest AAA publishers, dozens of competitors are to Meccha Chameleon itself. Just not on Steam. Some of you are not playing Meccha Chameleon. Maybe you're playing Paint and Seek, or Paint and Hide, or maybe Paint to Hide. All fun, original twists in the formula. But if you're not playing those, well, the youth around you almost certainly are. And that's because Meccha Chameleon went mega viral in Steam, but Steam is not the only place for gaming. And it is definitely not the biggest. So, yeah. My fellow millennials, this is going to be grim. This chart is from Roblox data analytics site RoWatcher, and it compares Meccha Chameleon's concurrent player count with the equivalent games over in Roblox. Now, most of these clones that I just mentioned here are the things that come up in Roblox's search if you search for Meccha Chameleon. And you can see how quickly the clones arrive, and how quickly they actually start overtaking Meccha Chameleon's Steam player count. It kind of happened within about 3 weeks of launch. Now, each of the clones in that graph has had more than 10 million visits. These games don't even need to be as good or polished as the already rather scrappy Meccha Chameleon because they're free. There's no $6 entry fee, at least to start, of course, because these games are often full of Robux spending opportunities. But far more importantly, these games are out shockingly fast. Let me give you some dates. Meccha Chameleon's concurrent peak was at June 21st. Now, this is a full 3D game with complex systems, and even with all that, the clones were up on Roblox within a day. Now, that's far faster than this type of thing used to happen, and it's far more predatory to the players who basically hop into these copycat games, because it's not like there haven't been other copycats on, say, Steam. As an example, Meccha Chameleon launched on June 9th, and within weeks, Steam started to see updates for Scribble Hunt, a game where you paint the bunny man, a hide-and-seek where you blend in like a chameleon. Not exactly subtle with your keywords there, lads. But it is subtle when compared to what that game calls itself in Korea, where it is just called Meccha Chameleon. Yeah. Now, there's of course a long tradition of copycats in gaming, Doom clones to, say, the mobile store surges around games like, say, Flappy Bird, a game that was generating a clone about every 24 minutes back in 2014. And sometimes the clones do really well, like, say, the battle between Threes and 2048, where the clone completely eclipsed the original. But this here in Roblox doesn't actually seem to be one of those cases. When we look at all these numbers, do we think this ultimately hurts Meccha Chameleon? No, these devs have already made many millions in the last month with a game that absolutely did not cost millions to produce. And it's a game that doesn't need growing player counts or rising concurrence. People can buy it, play it for a few rounds with their friends, enjoy a few evenings, and then that can be that. Happy days, right? Their business model is completely just upfront sales, and on that count, they have wildly succeeded. So they're not directly hurt by these copycats, the same way that, say, other games have been hurt. But that graph does show that even as players crown Meccha Chameleon the future of gaming, the people who will comprise that future are playing in a very, very different world indeed. At the risk of stating the obvious, everyone playing Meccha Chameleon is playing it on Steam, and Steam is a platform that's huge, but that's also growing rapidly even now. But if you take a look at this, which is Epillion's market share data, turns out we're not so big after all, my fellow PC gamers. Roblox actually already averages more monthly users than Steam. It has more monthly hours than Steam, PlayStation, and Fortnite combined. It's pretty big. And even individual Roblox games are able to pull in more players than Blizzard Entertainment's entire output put together, or say more than Dota. And they're often trading blows with the likes of, say, Fortnite and Counter-Strike. So they are shockingly high numbers, and that's how Meccha Chameleon can be surpassed in aggregate, even as the devs of the original are adding in, say, maps, so the Meccha Chameleon's getting lots of new content, and of course it's got a Steam Workshop page that's also flooded with more content. You'd think that would make the original by far the best place to go, certainly better than some Roblox knockoff that's full of microtransactions, but it does not matter that Meccha Chameleon is way better in Steam with way more content. Because most people, most gamers, and I hate to say this, I truly do, most aren't in Steam. The new form of gaming has grown around us. Us being, I guess, I think me and like the people who probably watch this channel, we've just been blissfully unaware. And to add to that, it's very much a future audience. Data suggests that 56% of Roblox's users are under 17 and have been playing games there for years. Even if, of course, that causes endless problems and controversy. Another interesting thing is the location split. It is broadly even across the world. So for the copycat, Steam is obviously just irrelevant. It does not matter. This is an entire new audience, and this, by which I mean free knockoff games and Roblox, well, that is what video games actually are to those people, and right now, they feel no real reason to move, because Roblox is still growing fast. The far future of gaming honestly spooks me out a bit, because that's what this graph really shows. We see that as viral sensations come along, the biggest platform in the world spins up alternatives super quick, and those alternatives very quickly serve a far larger audience than the original. There is an element of sheer ingenuity to this, I suppose. You rely on the likes of Steam to sort of find new hits, and then you quickly copy-paste them over, right? And whenever you copy-paste them over, well, you know you're copy and pasting over a winning, proven formula, and even better, you're copying it over to a distinct audience that literally doesn't play Steam games most of the time. But of course, there is also a question of ability, and this is where I also get spooked. You see, modern tools and systems can get these clones out within a day or two. Roblox's development suite, with the Gen AI stuff behind it, means that these games can be put in front of people unbelievably fast. And since these games are free to play, you get a world of quickly spun up disposable games, all trying to get you to spend as much as possible all building into the hype, while Roblox collects its ground rent on every microtransaction purchase. And that's what gaming is to these kids. They get the experience they want, and they get it as fast and cheap as possible, all in the location their friends actually hang out in. And for the most part, it seems they stay in Roblox. So with this, the whole AAA versus indie darling debate doesn't even come into it. Games like Meccha Chameleon prove that there's a market for a great idea, but that doesn't mean that games like that are the future. If you ask me, more likely than not, in terms of revenue, the future is these disposable Roblox games. I mean, I hate that. And I hate what it teaches, because it teaches people that games are disposable. I don't think that's healthy for the long term of our industry. I think that the more we treat games as disposable junk food entertainment, the less we'll respect what games can do, and maybe the less we'll actually get out of our games. I think our standards will lower. And of course, people need to eat. So as Roblox grows and grows and grows and grows, we are likely going to see more people with game design and development skills making Roblox things. Because ultimately, that's where a lot of the upcoming audience is. Of course, the sad part of that is the monetization all relies on Robux, which honestly absolutely sucks. Just a future of disposable games stuffed full of microtransactions doesn't feel great to me. And do you know what it reminds me of? Slack versus Microsoft Teams. There's a bit of a saying that, distribution is everything. And if your opponent's distribution is good enough, it doesn't matter the quality of your product. I mean, Slack is infinitely better than Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is a painful, horrible time. Yet Microsoft Teams absolutely mogged Slack because Microsoft have distribution. Roblox has distribution, and that's going to be not how they come in and kill Steam, but it will be how they grow around Steam to the point where Steam just kind of looks like a rounding error. Thankfully, though, Steam does bring in the billions. PC gaming is still absolutely huge, and I think the future, generally speaking, is actually pretty bright for games. I know that may seem a little bit tone deaf right now, but I think that we're in a little bit of a rotation in the market. There's been bad stuff. There will be more bad stuff. This does tend to happen in markets, and likely a new normal will begin to form. I think we're already seeing glimmers of that on Steam with a sort of new era of games that are being very successful. So our future is bright. But we shouldn't think that the way that we play games is how games are played generally. Because if we were to think that, we would be completely wrong, misinformed, and therefore would be less able to understand the world around us. So I hope we've helped you with that today. And if you'd like to hear a fun story that just broke about EA being forced to retreat on some of their bullshit, watch the next video.